Hello. I didn't expect to see you. The shop's not open, I'm afraid. You can see what I'm doing if you like. I'm making a pumpkin face for Halloween. I bought this pumpkin from the greengrocers. I've scraped out the inside so that it's hollow. You can see where I've begun to make a face out of it. I've cut out 2 eyes and I've cut out a nose. It's going to be a pumpkin face to scare away the witches of Halloween.
Welcome back again to Round the Archives in Conversation. I'm here, Lisa's here,
Hello.
Martin's here,
Hello.
Paul is here,
Hello.
and Nick is here as well.
Hello.
Well, welcome indeed to all of you. Now, I think we all have our favourite actors, don't we?
Yes.
Across the board. And we like to see them in both familiar parts and in unusual parts as well.
Yes.
Now, we've been watching the Cleopatras
We have.
these last few weeks.
Yes.
Mainly
nights.
last few nights, mainly because there's an article coming up for issue 50.
Yes.
And you spotted some very familiar faces,
Oh, yes.
didn't you, Lisa?
Yes.
Such as?
Well, last night, Patrick Troughton
Yeah,
as a Roman general.
yeah.
Not in a too familiar Patrick Troughton way. There wasn't too much throat clearing.
But he
that
does
sort
go,
of thing.
oh dear.
Yes, he did at one point.
My. Does he keep his clothes on?
Yes.
Yes, thankfully.
Fortunately.
Thank God for that. Right.
Yes.
But Martin, you've recently indulged in some Crown Court, haven't you?
I was listening to your latest podcast, and you said about buying them, so I went and looked for the cheapest one I could possibly find.
Yeah.
As recommended. £8 off network, if anybody's thinking. Volume 3. And I picked it up. I literally popped through the letterbox around about half an hour ago, and was still in the plastic until you told me to unwrap it.
So, what does the inside sleeve say? Because I believe it lists the stories and some of the guest stars.
It does, and you get 13 stories in a set of 4 discs, and I'm just looking through this now and finding out all sorts of people who are terribly exciting, who are in all sorts of other things, and indeed all sorts of writers who are terribly exciting and in all sorts of things. I'm seeing Windsor Davis, I'm seeing Tony Selby, I'm seeing Ron Pember, I'm seeing David Calder, you know. I'm seeing Dennis Lill, who some of us from Survivors are quite fond of, you know. Norman Rossington, Russell Hunter. This is a good set. I'm glad I got this one. I hadn't a clue who was in it when I ordered it, so this is looking good. Oh, Warren Clark. Now I'm about to do a project for my other project involving Warren Clark, so that's a good one too. I'm not really a huge fan of Cyril Shaps. You got to have a Cyril. You got to have a Cyril. But no, I'm not a massive fan of watching everything an actor does. I don't do that generally. That's why I don't sort of follow everything that David Tennant was in. I just can't bring myself to have that kind of approach to actors. You know, I actually have to think the programme itself is worthy, which is why I gave up on Broadchurch after the first year, because I just thought it was awful. But let's not go there. We don't want to talk about Broadchurch today. Let's talk about some actors.
But Nick, some of those names obviously leap out at you, and I suspect that Russell Hunter's one of your favourites.
Yes.
But talk to us about Russell Hunter a minute. What if people don't know Russell Hunter, what should they seek him out in?
They should seek him out first and foremost in Callan. A magnificent performance as Lonely, but it's only when you get to things like Ace of Wands, well, not so much Ace of Wands, because you say Ace of Wands don't exist anymore, but Mr. Stabs with Shadows, and indeed Robots of Death Yuvanov, or the Cawdor City CDs that came out in the noughties, you realise what a fantastically versatile actor he was. That he could play dominant and he could play cringing, and he was just a marvellous all-rounder. And the fact that he was able to pick up the part of Ivanov when they brought the Cawdor City back, I have to say the Cawdor City ones on Big Finish are a combination of sort of Chris Boucher's characters from Blake and from Doctor Who. So the throwaway mentioned Cawdor City in Robots of Death is expanded on here, and Russell Hunter just clicks right back into Ivanov even years after playing the part. So he really was a dear old pro. And
I was going to say, I remember seeing some footage of a convention in Scotland.
I've got that.
Where one of the Vok robots comes on stage, sort of behind him.
That is a super.
So I was just going to say, I was just seeing Russell Hunter in an episode of Lovejoy, playing very drunk.
Yeah, that was GalaxyCon from 1990. I've taped it now onto digital. And but it's a super panel, and he's just so funny and such a I like the way he goes. I think Tom Baker's been a Time Lord all this time. He's just having us on. He's just brilliant, and he just marvellous appreciation of his fellow actors. And it sounded like a nice guy. I wish he'd done more interviews now. But of course, we lost him in 2004, I think, to leukemia.
I mean, we did briefly see him at One Thing many years ago, didn't we? He did a sort of solo panel.
Yes. But I thought he was on with David Maloney.
Possibly, but unfortunately, at that point, we hadn't really seen much of his other stuff.
No.
Yeah.
And I always like to ask actors about things other than Doctor Who. But sometimes if you haven't seen the stuff in the first place, it's a bit difficult to do.
Yes.
That's very true, because I remember when we saw that GalaxyCon video, and he was talking about things being sold in Japan. Why don't you take a bath? And at the time, I didn't actually I didn't realise what that reference referred to. Of course, now I realise. Of course, he was a household name as Lonely. And of course I didn't know that back in 90.
What did your mum used to call him?
She called him Smelly. Oh yeah, that's Smelly from Callan.
Almost right, but not quite.
Yeah. But I remember he's very good in. I mean, he's very good in every episode of Callan he's in. But I think my particular favourite is The Worst Soldier I Ever Saw, where he apologises to Alan Cuthbertson for having blown up his safe.
Yeah.
He says goodbye to him.
I can't remember the episode now, but I think it might be Summoned to Appear, when he's a loo cleaner in a strip club, and it's kind of like Callan's reaction to it is just brilliant. And when he goes fishing as well. But there's a lovely bit in the last episode. I won't say anything just in case anybody hasn't seen the last episode yet. But he actually, after all these seasons, when he's really mortally worried about Callan, he calls him David. He calls him by his first name, and that's actually quite an affecting moment, because you think, there really is quite a deep friendship between them.
But Paul, you said you've been watching some more Lovejoy, and you said you'd seen a two-parter with Brian Blessed.
Brian Blessed, Brian Blessed and Linda Gray from Dallas, apparently she and Ian McShane had been in Dallas together. He played her boyfriend a year or so before this episode of Lovejoy, so presumably they got on well, and there was some deliberate reason for them sort of returning the compliment and her being on Lovejoy, but you can see they got on well, the characters. Brian Blessed was kind of playing a Brian Blessed character, but he was slightly different this time. Because he thought he had all the cards, as it were, and in fact, actually, it reminded me of one of those. I can't remember what it's called now. That series where they're all trying to, more recent series where they sort of something tricks.
New tricks,
yeah, where they're kind of doing a sting on somebody, and that's what sort of Lovejoy and Linda Gray and a couple of other people were doing on Brian Blessed's character. But,
Do you mean Hustle? New Tricks is the police thing.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
yes, I probably mean Hustle. I haven't seen either of them, but I know roughly what they're about. Well, I don't, obviously, clearly don't. But also, I've just seen a three-parter with Joanna Lumley. I think she played a character called Victoria, who was a bit of a love interest. But they gave her something to do in the first episode, and then she was kind of... It was a bit sort of... could have used her a bit better off. It must have been around the same time as she started doing Absolutely Fabulous, probably a few months before.
But old Big Brian, isn't he a villain in the very first Sweeney?
I think he's definitely one episode of the Sweeney, but
yeah, it's just that thing of people who you've known for playing good guys suddenly starting to play bad guys is always a bit of a strange transformation, because I imagine about that time he would have been mostly known for Z Cars, wouldn't he?
I mean, Brian's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
In that he in Z Cars, he's one of those actors who sort of evolves a persona over time. Because we've seen him do his one man show.
yes,
And you very much get the Brian Blessed you expect.
you do. Yes,
But is it fair to say that persona only really evolves with Flash Gordon?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Martin, you're about to or have just done I Claudius, haven't you?
Yes.
And his appearance in I Claudius.
He's not shouty in that and doesn't wear any wings. No,
That's
true.
No.
It's,
It's so far away from Flash Gordon. Yeah,
It is a bit shouty.
yeah.
There's a couple of shouty bits.
No, I think you play to what people expect of you, don't you? And let's face it, people wouldn't after Flash Gordon, people would have expected him to be that that larger than life. I mean that's what he plays up to. But I imagine when he's in his own house or in his own garden, he isn't bellowing across the road at everybody all the time. It's, pass the salt, dear, or whatever. It's a persona that's put on for the likes of us, really,
Yeah.
And I mean, if you think about before Claudius, he'd done 2 Space 1999s, hadn't he? As separate characters. I mean, that's the thing about Brian Blessed particularly is people after Flash Gordon associate him with that kind of character, but he was actually a very diverse actor before then.
But Nick, I think you're one of those people who gets to know actors occasionally.
Occasionally, yeah.
Is it true to say that the persona you sometimes see on the telly is not the actor?
Are we talking about Brian or generally across the board?
Yeah.
Certainly with Brian, I think, we're very great friends with his daughter. We've had drinks with her. We've gone to see her shows in London, and we had a long chat with her once, and she said she was talking about general sort of mental health and sort of things. It said my father's not an ordinary man, he's a bit of a handful, but she's sent us pictures of him and Hildegard Neal, his wife, and Rosie's boyfriend watching the football, and he's just gently watching and just chilling out with all his family, and also I have to say, keeping with Brian, although I will move on, it's interesting what you were saying about post Flash Gordon and playing up to it. That does sort of hit a note, because when you see him in Death's Other Dominion, and indeed The Survivors, when he plays Brod in The Survivors, there is 2 Brians going on. There are 2 levels going on here. There's sort of when he gets his voice very low like that, and when he goes, and in perhaps less so, but in Cygnus Alpha, when he goes to blink, it is a spacecraft, isn't it? And then he bellows again, and then he's quiet again. And generally, I'm just trying to think of someone who's a bit different from their persona.
Well, I have to ask, could you tell us your story of sharing a taxi with Henry Woolf?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, that's got to be my favourite, almost my favourite memory of meeting a celebrity. In brief, we actually went to Chiswick, Ali and I, because we thought, Henry Woolf, because I'm very lucky with Ali because she gets very excited about actors too, and sort of, and said, "Well, we've got to meet him," because of course he was getting on a bit, and he was coming back from Canada. So we get out of the underground, and we look around and say, "Right, which way are we going?" And there, if you please, standing almost opposite to us, is little Henry Woolf with a very crumpled Google map, and we say, "Hello, are you going to the event?" Kind of. It was surreal, and he hasn't changed much from the 70s. He's and we don't know where we're going. We don't know where we're going. Let's try and follow the map. And we merrily got lost in Chiswick for an hour with Henry Woolf, and it was just delightful because he was so down to earth and he was so interested in things. And when we were telling him about things, about conventions or whatever, and he goes, "How funny!" and you wouldn't think this was the great man that discovered Harold Pinter, and but there was we were scratching our heads, and we all kind of gave up after a while. And he was so even-tempered about being completely lost. And we got into a taxi, all three of us, and it was somebody else's taxi, so he had pulled up for somebody else, and we were all carted out of it. But no, he was absolutely lovely. And him and Ali were talking about the Sunmakers and how the Collector would be written differently now because he's in a wheelchair, and he'd have all these benefits and things. And they're merrily sort of rewriting the Sunmakers. He was a magic little fella, an absolute legend and a gentleman.
But Martin, check a few more names at us from your Crown Court list.
Well, I was just giving some thought to what you were saying about people being very different, because there are so many actors. We talk about Russell Hunter, and obviously he was so well known for being this sort of low life, smelly character, and yet obviously he was quite a posh bloke. And a lot of it's like when you think about Wilfred Brambrell in the same way, these characters. And what fascinated me recently was it Shoestring, where Harry H. Corbett turns up.
No, we've not seen that one. We've only really seen the first episode.
Yeah, I was going to say we've not seen Shoestring beyond episode 1.
Yeah.
I think it was very much towards the end of his career, but you suddenly when you actually see actors who from who's best known as one thing, and yet they turn up in something completely different. I mean, when you think about Una Stubbs, for example, Una Stubbs in the 60s would have been from Till Death, and yet to the generation in the late 70s, she's Aunt Sally. You even think the same about John Pertwee to a certain extent. John Pertwee to the early 70s is Doctor Who, in the late 70s is Wurzel. And they're very different characters, and neither really are him.
But Paul, I was going to say Paul and Nick, of course, you saw Harry H. Corbett in Your Tales of the Unexpected.
In the Moles, yeah, bless him.
Recently.
He's a mate, and again, he's, as you say, Martin, he's one of those actors you kind of a generation puts in a box because of Steptoe, and he was and we've got a record of him in the 60s or 50s singing sea shanties. And it's incredibly versatile. We only saw the tip of the iceberg most of the time, but I love watching his performances.
I mean, again, you think of even Carry On Screaming. It's very, very different, and a lovely performance.
Very thorough as well. He's one of those actors. I believe that generation of actors with Leonard Rossiter, and they really didn't spare themselves. They were so meticulous and thorough and rehearsed a lot and got the comedy right, and I think it cost them a bit. I think they pushed themselves to a limit, which is why sadly ones like himself and Rossiter went young, because they just did really. But also,
they get associated, don't they, with comedy after a while.
Yes.
When they are serious, were considered themselves to be serious actors.
Oh yeah.
And of course. That very seems very rarely happen the other way around. You very, very rarely see someone who was, whose career starts off in comedy, ending up being a serious actor. It does happen, obviously, but very, very, it's much the other way around. I mean, you think of all the Dad's Army folk, and the roles they had before Dad's Army, and then you think of not John Lomez, what's his name? We're Doomed.
Oh,
John Laurie.
John Laurie, yeah.
John Laurie
Shakespeare actor
in the Hitchcock film.
Yeah.
but in the Hitchcock films, and then here he is at the latter end of his career. He's basically remembered for being this comic character.
And it gave John the Measurer needed to be kicked up the rear end by his wife to take Dennis Potter's Traitor, which was specially written for him. He's magnificent in that. He really is, as like a one-off play, one of Dennis Potter's first, and he's really great in that. But he really had to be persuaded to look. His wife said, "Look, are you going to just do light comedy all your life? This is a big opportunity."
This is the thing, though, isn't it? The association with comedy.
Yeah.
People suddenly surprised that someone who was an actor for 20 years before they did that can actually act.
Absolutely. Norman Wisdom's another one, because he, of course, was associated totally with comedy. And then there was I haven't seen it since it was first televised, but Going Gently, a play about dying of cancer. And there was him and Fulton Mackay, and they were brilliant together, absolutely brilliant. He was totally serious and quite sinister at one point, when he starts getting very frustrated with the nurse. It's actually quite scary. So he was another one that wanted to be taken seriously as an actor.
Well, that was the thing that did for Tony Hancock, of course, wasn't it?
Yes.
But Paul, you've got some things lined up for articles. But can you drop a few names of some of the actors we might be talking about when you cover these shows? Don't name the shows themselves, but just name some of the stars. We'll see if we can work out what the shows might be.
It's a quiz. Hey, we don't do quizzes.
Well, actually, this is probably better for Nick to say, because one of the articles we've done, he's the expert in, and I was more the interviewer. So Nick,
insider trading.
Would you like?
I see.
would you like to mention some of the names from the article we were doing recently?
Yes, Stephen Greif. There's another actor who's very different to his, because he's always playing villains and serious people and rather arrogant villains. And I've met him twice now. He's a very shy guy, very self-contained, very unassuming. So he's one. David Gant, who sci-fi fans will remember as Eldred in this Creature's Revenge, third Sapphire and Steel story. He's very, very different in the show, in the thing that we review, whatever it might be. Brian Marshall, who's he's been in everything basically. Dick Turpin, off the top of my head, and various other things.
Is that a chap from Warship?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. There's Ian McShane, of course, needs no introduction. Leon Eagles.
Yes.
Drama teacher to our friends Gareth and Sarah. Just before he sadly died. Dennis Lawson.
Not connected. That wasn't connected in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think so. No, I'd like to think not. James Bolam. Happy birthday to Mr. Bolam today. I think he's 80. Or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. He was 80. I've met him too. He's just like his characters. He's a grumpy.
Does that mean he was born on the same day as Carol Ann Ford then?
It was. I can't remember. It was either yesterday or today. So if not, then there's only about 24 hours between them. That's kind of bewildering, isn't it? Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? No, he must be older than 80, surely. No, I think he is.
I thought he said
85. Sorry, yes. Yeah, sorry, 85. And John Shrapnel, another great we've just lost. He's
went to my school. There you go.
Yes.
Weirdly.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Ian McKellen and Alan David, who's one of these actors that's always popping up. He was in Unquiet Dead with Chris Eccleston, and he was in a sitcom called The Squirrels. We also looked at him. He gives an electrifying performance in this show, whatever it is. Who else is there?
Because the Squirrels has all sorts of connections, doesn't it?
Yes. Ken Jones.
It's just kind of weird. Isn't that our friend who's the first actor seen in colour on Doctor Who? Is it?
I wondered what you're going to say then. First
Ellis Jones. Ellis Jones.
Oh, right.
Is he not in?
The radar operator in Spear.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yes.
Was he not in the Squirrels?
I can't remember.
I don't know. Let's have a look. I'm going to look up the squirrels now because.
Well, there we go. But this is where we have to cut 10 minutes because nobody knows anything.
Speaking of Stephen Grief, we just saw him. He was in the Cleopatras the other night.
Yes,
wasn't
he was.
Not for long.
Did he have his clothes on?
Only partly. He was bare-chested.
Yeah.
He had a strap-on beard though, which most of us
Thank God you carried on staying the same. Did he have gold nipples?
No.
He was in Special Branch on Monday, talking pictures.
Yeah.
In the same outfit.
Whilst you're looking him up, can I just throw this one in? Two actors that have sprung to mind, both in Special Branch very recently. Well, when I say recently, 1974, but they're re-showing them. Tony Beckley from Seeds of Doom playing a drag artist assassin in a Douglas Camfield episode. And it took us a little while to realize there's Michael Sheard in it, who gets bumped off by him, and Jacqueline Pearce is his sidekick. So Servalan and Harrison Chase as in one show. That really is awesome. And the other person that turned up was an actor.
That's who can be the campus.
That's right. I think Tony won hands down on that occasion. It was a very low key Jacqueline Pearce. But Stuart Wilson, who's an actor who turns up as baddies and things, Return of the Saint, and he was in Running Blind, the spy thriller. He was a guest star in that. I thought, this is a bit random, but I think he would have made a very good James Bond, because he's got that toughness and ruthlessness. But I think he could have pulled it on. I'm very surprised he wasn't put up for the part, or maybe he was.
So I've got some names for you from the other article that I've been involved in, which I believe will be in episode 50. So what TV show has the following actors in? Not all in the same episodes. Bill Bixby, Burgess Meredith, Leslie Nielsen, Leonard Nimoy, Adam West, Agnes Moorehead, William Wyndham.
It's not Bewitched, is it?
No, because I think I've already done Bewitched. Although they're probably in probably a lot of them are in that. Mainly American.
Is it a drama or a comedy? Gives a clue. Oh, gives a clue, Paul. Paul.
David McCallum, Dean Stockwell, David Carradine.
That sounds very bionic, actually. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say anyway, so I can't give you the answer.
Well, there we go then.
You can say, because I announced it yesterday, I think.
Oh, yes, you did, yeah. It's Night Gallery, which is... yes, Rod Serling's 70s fair. And many other actors.
Is it easy to get these days?
Oh, Night Gallery is, yes. I mean, for ages, I think when it first came out, I was buying it on Region 1, but I think there's a box set of it, there's only 3 seasons, but quite a few episodes. It's all in Region 2 now. So.
Yeah. See, the thing is funny. I've got a book which has articles on it from way back when. I think it might be one of those Starlog books. And all that gets me about it is that Rod Serling, in his kipper tie jacket thing with big hair, looks nothing like the Rod Serling of the Twilight Zone.
And it's not that many years between the two. It's only about 6.
Obviously, easy life.
Because the pilot episode is 69, so that's only about 6 years after Twilight Zone finished.
Thank you.
But I was just looking up the squirrels, getting back to it, and yes, we were right with Ellis Jones.
Oh, thank God for that.
But yeah, the connections for the squirrels include Bernard Hepton, Ken Jones, Patsy Rowlands, Maureen O'Brien, Harold Innocent, Alan Armstrong, and Philip Maddock. And Peter Vaughan. We should talk about Peter Vaughan, actually, Lisa.
Yes.
You do get the impression there were only about 24 actors in the 60s, and they're all just going on each other's shows all the time.
In everything. but let's just say about Peter Vaughan a minute, Lisa.
Yes.
What have we?
We watched him the other night in
Something. We better just say something.
Which we might be doing at some point. Not necessary for our podcast, maybe for somebody else's. But yeah, he's always good value, Peter Vaughan, and he always brings something different to the role.
Yeah. Because to me, obviously, there's Grouty.
Yes.
But there's also Citizen Smith as well.
Yeah.
But he turns up in the Rivals of Sherlock Holmes, doesn't he?
He's wonderful in the Rivals of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Because he gets 2 entries in that.
He does.
He?
Yeah.
Who's the chap? Is it Tony Steedman who replaces him in
It
Citizen
is.
Smith?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
isn't it the fact that Tony Steedman and him seem to basically interchange for about 10 years?
They're very similar looking as well, so I think that's obviously why they went for Tony Steedman to take over the part. But we did go through a period of time where every drama we watched from the 70s had Tony Steedman in it. It's like, oh god, it's him again. And the 60s, because we did It's Dark Outside, and he's a guest star in the first series of that, isn't he?
Yeah, but he turns up as Socrates in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, or Socrates, as they call him.
Socrates. I just vaguely remember he got into some trouble over on the motorway, and that being a headline for a while. And the only thing I knew about him was that he was the guy who wasn't Harry Grout, Wolfie's second dad or whatever they call it, second father-in-law. But I've got to do a bit of a Peter Vaughan marathon myself, actually, for our friends in the north for the letter O. So there we go.
Right. Oh, we have got that. We haven't actually watched it yet, but yes, very good.
It's going to be 11 and a half hours, so we may have a bit of a space between episodes for that.
Gosh. Yes.
Without saying too much, as a not spoiler for a future episode around the archives, I can also reveal that I am doing an article where Harpo Marx and John Wayne appear in the same show, not necessarily in the same episode.
Get up your horse and drink your milk.
But I can't tell you which series that is, because
Even I can't work out what that is, and I'm the blooming editor, so that'll be a nice surprise. But yeah, looking back at that, the squirrels list, what about Bernard Hepton? What do you think? What do you think of when we say Bernard Hepton?
Fantastic.
Yes, he is. I think a really troll actually.
Yeah.
Because there's the episode where everybody's evacuated to the Bridge Hall.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely marvellous. Because it's a sort of study in loneliness of this man who lives on his own. Nobody particularly likes him because he's the sort of area.
He's an organiser.
He's an organiser, and he's trying to organise people who don't really want to be organised. But yeah, he's marvellous. Obviously, he's in Secret Army.
Yeah.
And I think him as well as Thomas Cranmer.
All right.
Oh yes.
Henry VIII.
Yeah.
He's in both versions, in the television series and the film. So he must have done such a good job that they carried him over to the film.
Yeah.
So
Also turns up in Colditz, of course. And,
of course. Yeah.
And in Claudius. And
Yes.
I always think he's a teeny bit wasted in Colditz, considering what he can do and the range he's got. We watched him. We did Henry and Elizabeth R back to back recently, and yeah, he's just you really it's a real downer when he gets killed off because wretched history. But the other standout Bernard for me is which we've also watched recently by the pricking of my thumb with the Doomwatch episode because he gets to be angry, he gets to be frustrated. You know, it's a nice part for him.
He's in a 1985 episode of Bergerac, which I think was a Christmas special, playing a Sir in that one.
And Tinker Tailor Smiley Mole.
Yeah.
We've been to the spot that
Yes,
Thomas
yes,
Cranmer
yes,
was burned in Oxford,
Yeah.
haven't we?
Yeah.
Yes. Though the guide, we did a guided tour, and I sincerely hope that the student that was doing the guide wasn't taking history, because he completely made something up, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said no.
Isn't there a Lewis where some students do a tour of Oxford and keep making stuff up?
Yeah.
Talking about the crocodiles in the river and
Yes.
all that kind of thing.
I mean, I nearly took him aside and said, "Oh, you're not doing history, are you? Because if you are, I hope you know that all what you just said was wrong."
Because you could have just taken over. You could have had an entire new career then. You do know that, don't you?
I think it's interesting that, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, producers and directors do have their repertory company of people that they always use.
Yeah.
Because we were noting this with Up Pompeii with David Croft, didn't we?
Mm.
Yes.
The number of familiar faces that suddenly turned up, Nicholas Smith and Wendy Richard, in the same episode.
No, that's separate episodes.
Although I fell flat on my face the other day because I think we were watching. I can't remember what it was now, but Ian Fairbairn was in it. And I turned to Ali and said, "Oh, this has got to be Dougie Canfield. It's the only person who seems to employ him." And it wasn't. It was someone else. So that took me by surprise. So there's lots of action and Ian Fairbairn. So there you go.
Going back to Tony Beckley, I remember we saw him in Sergeant Cork because he's in 2 episodes of Sergeant Cork. One very recognisably as Tony Beckley. The other one, we actually got to the end of the episode, saw his name and had to go back and look again. Because he's playing a really hard... I hate to say the word butch, but sort of very strong character. And there's no sort of campness or anything like that at all in it.
But didn't we take ages to recognise Trevor Bannister as well?
Oh, yeah.
But Nick, talk about Trevor Bannister in the Tomorrow People, because he's so different to Are You Being Served? Isn't he?
Yes, and in fact, when I would have been about 6 when I first saw his episode Secret Weapon, and it's one of my earliest Tomorrow People memories. And even then, of course, I knew Are You Being Served, and being taken aback at the age of 6 that, gosh, there's Trevor Bannister, he's being serious. And it's a beautiful performance, very slick, and it's a very well written character. And yeah, he's wonderfully sinister, but never over the top. He's completely grounded in reality. Everything he seems to say is reasonable, even though he seems to go an inhuman way to do about doing it. So yeah, I'm a great fan. They were rather in the commentary on the DVD. They kept accusing him of his eyes kind of looking over to the monitor on in the TV studio, but it doesn't spoil it in the least for me. I think it's a brilliant performance.
But then the Tomorrow People is not bad for guest stars when you think about it, is it?
I mean,
let's just run through a few of the names that you can sort of see. And I mean, even somebody like Sylvia Coleridge turns up, doesn't she? Briefly, or Boggle-Eyed. But
that's not unusual, is it?
Yeah, but just talk about some of the first season stories, Nick. Who you've got there?
In terms of actors,
yes.
Well, let's just not forget the first story had somebody who was actually a film star, quite an established film star, and that's Francis de Woolf. So he must have been quite a coup, because and there was also Michael Standing, who for my money always had the best lines in Series 1, as Ginge. And of course he'd done films. He was in Italian Job with the old "You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off." So he's got actors of gravitas.
Well, I'm thinking
not necessarily big, but Neville Barber, who's always coming on and always having gravitas to that. You've got someone.
Well, I'm thinking especially of Kevin Stoney, for example.
Oh yeah,
of course, you've got Kevin Stoney, and you've got John Woodnut.
Yes. Yeah. That's quite a classy
rather
cast.
Wonderful together.
Yeah, I think John Woodnut, by his own admission on interviews, got very fed up with the sort of the low tech, kind of how everything was a bit clumsily done because they didn't really have the facilities in Thames. But it's a nice witty performance, and yeah, as you say, Kevin Stoney, who always plays everything with such gravitas. You also got I forget, there's Roger Bixby and Roger Booth. There's Roger Bixby, I think is Jedediah, isn't he, with the beard? He's a regular Thames guest star in things. He's in a Vandervalk as well, but he's got the kind of looks that you would have expected him to be in films. Quite a dashing kind of look. I'm very surprised he never really made a big name for himself. Maybe he did, I just haven't watched it. But he's another impressive person from that sort of first season.
We've got this whole sort of group of actors who are just, they'd come in, they'd do a couple of days, and they'd always be very good, you know. And then you've got another group that were the ones who, like I say, sort of, I mean, like Trevor Bannister specifically. If you look at anything from the 60s, he's a terribly serious, terribly good actor. And again, then gets this comedy part, and it's like nobody will employ him again.
It's very I've also seen
it's success, and yet somehow it must be bittersweet. You know, if you suddenly think, you know, it must be very difficult when you think, you know, look, 10 years ago I was doing this stuff, and you're not. You know.
I also seen Trevor Bannister in pantomime, which of course, although it's comedy, is the sort of more extreme end of comedy, and he was very good as the Dane. So, and you think, gosh, that's Colonel Masters. Kind of, who would have thought? You know?
Learn everything he knew from Mr. Inman.
Absolutely.
You got any tips for me on being the Dame?
Yeah.
Nick and I were talking about when we were doing one of our book club episodes, and we were discussing the biography about Kenny Everett, about how it was sad to see him sort of reduced to doing quiz shows in the last year. Like, you're thinking, well, you know, he's better than that. Get someone else to do a quiz show and get him to do a comedy show.
That's right. It's almost as if the BBC chopped him off at the knees, you know, after the television show, and it really.
But that happens a lot, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, you don't really think those last few years did him justice. You know, well, come on, you know, your talent isn't here. It's out there. It's, you know. Go and pick the World Scarlet.
I mean, it always amazes me how people's careers can be massive and then nothing.
Yes.
And then suddenly it's whatever happened to, and you think, you know, it's like people who are massive stars who are, you know, heading up program after program after program, and then nothing. You know. Thankfully, Nick Berry.
He's a director now, I believe.
Well, there you go. You see,
Nick Berry,
he's giving all the work to other people.
But no quiz show in the 80s was complete without Kenny Everett and Willie Rushton.
Yes. Are you thinking of Celebrity Squares?
I am thinking of Celebrity Squares.
Yeah.
Yes.
Willie Rushton sitting in the middle.
In the middle, always. Yeah. And Lorraine Chase. So.
But funnily enough, also coming back to sort of where we started, when you think about it, when we were sitting watching telly in the 70s, Crown Court every day, 3 days a week, whatever, Richard Wilson.
Yeah.
Richard Wilson, I mean, when he turned up in One Foot in the Grave, I'm thinking, oh, that's that bloke from Crown Court. You know? And of course, we know he did loads and loads of other things. We know he did. I know we did. But he basically went off to do, what's the Only When I Laugh, isn't it?
Yes.
And then again, seems to have only been associated to a certain extent with comedy since. You do get this horrible feeling, and maybe it's just the way my mind works, but do you sometimes get the feeling that people do their Doctor Who piece and then you never hear from them again?
I got the same feeling with me films, you know. I get people and they never act again, you know. Even though I've been on stage with them, you're like, where are they? I've put them off for life. But no, yes, you certainly. I mean, it's a shame, really. That they've just got so much to give.
Well, there's the whole, you know, oh, are they still alive thing when you hear about them not being, and you just think, I thought they died 30 years ago, because they've literally not worked.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing, of course, is that the business at the moment, it basically, if you're not prepared to do soaps, there's no work. You know, the people who are turning up in soap operas now, who would never have touched them sort of 20, 30 years ago, because that's where the work is.
But you mentioned Only When I Laugh there, Martin.
Right.
And that's got a really strong cast, doesn't it, when you think about who's sitting next to each other in bed.
Oh, yeah. Strowley, Bowles, Bolam.
Yeah. But Peter Bowles, for example, because you noted when you did Survivors that if you'd watched Survivors for the first time, would you think Peter Bowles was going to be the star? Could you say they kill him off?
They do.
Yeah.
And And how much of a surprise would that have been if you were there at the time?
I don't know if he was a big actor when he did it, but he probably was quite a well-known face, and people would have been surprised. And just for the fact that, this is going to sound terribly sexist, but it's the mindset of the time that you always think the lead is going to be the male actor rather than the female actor.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Christopher Strawley.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't really know Raffles, but I think Nick introduced me to Raffles, quite possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think I probably.
Well.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, I can't think of much he's in beyond those two parts.
Christopher Strawley.
Yeah.
He's in. I was reminded of it. What was I watching? I think it was, I was watching some adverts yesterday to pass the time. I think there was a trailer for Full House, and he was in that with Sabrina Franklin and various other people. I've forgotten who the other one is.
Yeah.
And I've got to take an opportunity here to point out that he is in Fortunes of War that nobody seems to ever remember. But he was in Fortunes of War.
I remember you saying now. I have bought Fortunes of War. It's gone on the pile to be watched with The Bride of Beth Fair and various other things.
Yeah.
Because
of course he turns up in the Rising Damp film, doesn't he?
Does. Yeah.
Replacing Richard Beckinsale.
He does.
To which Leonard Rossiter then said, if the film fails, you realise it's your fault.
Well, Leonard, of course. Leonard also, when he pops up in 2001, it's always a surprise. So if 2001 fails, it's his fault. Oh, wait a minute.
I was thinking about actors who maybe had been acting for years but are known for parts they did when they were pensionable age. I'm thinking of one of my favourites, Sheila Florence, who played Lizzie Bursworth in Prisoner Cell Block H. I'm looking at her IMDb. She'd done lots of other Australian TV, but she was sort of known for that one part. She's another one who is very. When I remember hearing her speaking, she plays quite a sort of. She's not exactly the female's Albert Steptoe, but she's along those lines, and she's very sort of coarse Australian accent, and in real life she was very well spoken. I think she was probably very glad to have the success, but sometimes you find on people who become known for soap operas then go on to other things and do lots of, they write their own scripts, they do stage work, and yet people still remember them for the role they did 30 years ago. But it's whether you take it well or whether you are bitter about it.
It's Galaxy Quest all over again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you by any chance watch that 3-part documentary on Australian cinema that was on iPlayer about a month ago?
I have.
It was just a great piece of documentary television.
I don't know if I've seen that one, but I have seen a few documentaries about the Australian film business on a DVD. So whether it's similar or covers similar ground.
It's just again the faces that pop up in that, and you think, oh yeah. Well, because it must be frustrating. I mean, I genuinely think it must be frustrating for anybody to still be getting questions about the fact that they were Tom Baker in 1974. I know Tom Baker has always been terribly, proud of his Doctor Who association, apart from the 2 years after he did it. But it must be, if your entire career is going to come down to the bloke who played X, Y, or Z, or the woman who played, this one role when the actual obituary headline is written, and you think, I did more than that.
Which reminds me of another thing I was going to mention. Have you ever seen an actor that you knew for like Doctor Who or something in a role that was quite shocking? I'm thinking of Tom Baker pretty much naked in Lives and Loves of a She-Devil.
Oh yeah.
I remember that bit. I remember that being a bit. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes, his little bottom bumps up and down a bit. I can't even say that. Bobs up and down a bit.
I feel you're about to create a GIF for us.
And I'm pretty sure that Peter Davison's jumping in and out of bed with people in very peculiar practice quite a lot. So.
Well, I remember being quite surprised, and this is a spoiler, but it's from Miss Marple, it's 40 odd years ago, when he turns out to be the murderer in A Pocket Full of Rye.
Oh yeah, I've said that on occasion myself. Yes, I was very shocked too, particularly as I was only like 12 or 13 or whatever when that came out, so I was still young enough to be shocked that that's the Doctor.
He did it again, didn't he, in the Mrs. Bradleys? So,
He did. Yes.
But it's fair to say, though, that people seeing his appearance in the Tomorrow People, that first shot is quite shocking. I don't know whether you've seen it, Martin, or not.
Yeah.
I've seen it, clips from it. I've got the box set. I've not got that far yet. But
As the camera pans up his legs to his pants, basically.
Space pants.
His space pants.
Yeah.
But they're always, there's this thing with actors though, isn't it? They're always saying that the villains are the best parts, and if you've spent your entire career playing Charlie Barlow, to suddenly get a few villains to play must be brilliant, you know, just to give you anything else to do really than having to be nobler and whiter than white all the time. You know?
On the other hand, I wasn't so affected when Paul McGann was announced as the Doctor, because at that time the only thing I knew that I could grab to see was Withnail and I. So the first thing I really ever saw Paul McGann in was Withnail and I. So whatever he had done in Doctor Who, and I was older as well. I think it was particularly seeing Tom and Peter in adult roles.
Pick a McGann, any McGann. Did any of his brothers go up for the job as well? Do we know that?
Yes. Mark was up for the job,
Somewhere I've got the list.
It's in the Regenerations book.
I've got the list of... And the list is incredibly long.
Yes.
Because it does include Peter Capaldi, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. I don't think he ever got as far as an audition.
And Eccleston.
Yeah. And things like people like Dermot Crowley, who obviously did... I mean, he was up for it when Sylvester took it on, but I think he was up again.
All right.
I think.
I think he would have made quite a good Doctor. We were watching the Time of the Rani extras the other day, and his audition piece is pretty good. You know, it's quite quirky.
It's interesting, these what ifs. Because I actually say Paul McGann was originally cast as Sharp in before Sean Bean, and he got as far as starting filming, and then they were playing football and he injured himself.
Yeah.
And it meant that he had to pull out and they had to cast again. So I always think, what would have happened if he hadn't injured himself? Because he might not have been available to be the Doctor in the TV movie. Yeah. So you might have got Sean Bean as the Doctor. He could still be there now. So, though he does repeatedly get killed off in most parts he plays. Sean Bean. He's getting known for that now. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
But Martin.
Hello.
Hello.
I was just listening to you all then. Sorry.
You were listening there. You said about Windsor Davies at the start of this. And,
lovely boy.
I was just looking at his IMDb listing, and I love the way he's listed for 8 Hour Hot Mum as playing Battery Sergeant Major Shut Up Williams. It's actually listed as Shut Up Williams.
Yes. Was that his nickname? He wasn't he? Is he the? I'm trying to remember now whether I'm remembering this wrong. But was he the only other semi-regular in Mr. Reader?
No, what's his face? The big chap, William Goddard. Willoughby Goddard. Sorry.
But I mean, apart from the main cast, was he? Doesn't he turn up in 2 or 3 as a detective?
Yeah.
He's something else.
Yes, he's a police.
He's a police.
He's a police.
He's a police.
He's the police.
Yeah, he's the chief inspector and a sergeant.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he gets promotion.
It's promotion between series.
Yeah. But again, he's because I mean we sort of know him from, or we can't really know him from Evil of the Daleks. But he did a lot of that sort of part, didn't he? Before his comedy career.
It was Cockney way before he was Welsh.
Comedy just ruins people's lives, doesn't it? We have no more comedy. We need to stop all this comedy. It's ruining their acting careers.
Well, I think they're pretty much there now with Never Will Comedy at the moment, aren't they? Not doing that much.
I mean, sometimes. I mean, I'm not usually affected by. I try and not be pulled in by sort of typecasting stuff, but. I was watching. I've forgotten the name of the series, but it doesn't really matter. But I was watching a Netflix series, a current day one, a thriller, and it was all serious. And Jennifer Saunders was playing like a mother character and playing a straight role, and she was doing fine in it. But it was very hard because there's so many years of her playing. I think Dawn French did serious things 20 years ago or more, but I haven't seen Jennifer Saunders do much serious, and it was kind of like, oh gosh, I really am having to struggle to not sort of wait for her to do something funny, because she got murdered after about 2 episodes, and it was all deadly serious. But I did have trouble. That was one time where I really sort of had trouble.
You're waiting for the twitch around the mouth where she's about to say something whimsical.
Or Dawn to stick her head in and kind of go, Jen, you all right?
I've got a big part in it. Yeah.
Nick, you were there at the time, as it were, but obviously you remember Joanna Lumley for Sapphire and Steel, and for the New Avengers.
Yes.
Did you accept her sort of ability to play 2 very different parts?
Oh yeah, I mean, as I say, I came to her first with the New Avengers, which was like nothing I'd ever seen before, and I suppose I thought, ooh, because I was also at the time I was a fan of the Invisible Man, sorry, with David McCallum. So I reckon, I was quite familiar with David McCallum as well. So yes, I could see how, and also her portrayal of Purdy has a wonderful, she can go from comedy to drama with such style and ease that you could more or less you wouldn't be too surprised by what she'd give you, because she's obviously a very capable actress. So yeah, I suppose I didn't really watch Ab Fab, but I saw bits obviously. And she was, I thought she was very good in it. I wasn't a fan or anything, but it's a nice, different performance.
But I'm just thinking that when Peter Davison, becomes the Doctor, he's the first person who's got lots of other shows on at the time, isn't he? Really, not just All Creatures, but Sink or Swim and
Holding the Fort.
Yeah. So, do you
As
think
a leading man, yes. I mean, obviously Troughton had done shed loads. But he was, I don't think it was a household name like Peter Davison was.
No.
But Peter arguably maybe, but it's difficult to know. Going back to Hartnell, he was a film star. He'd gone off the radar a little bit by the time he did Who, but he had his own fan club in the 40s, so there was probably a fan base out there somewhere.
Arguably, William Russell is actually more famous on the telly at that point because of Lancelot.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yes, I just wonder sometimes whether some viewers have trouble accepting somebody in a different part, or do they always see them as that bloke that plays the vet or whatever.
Well, I did say to you this morning, didn't I? I think it's in the next episode of the Cleopatras. You get the first appearance of Julius Caesar as played by Robert Hardy.
Oh yeah.
And I do wonder how many people went, oh, that's Siegfried. Oh, Siegfried doesn't do that.
Yeah.
I think I'd be, if anything, I'm remembering waking up one morning and discovering that Peter Davison was the Doctor. I was probably more accepting of it when I was 12 than if the same thing happened today. If someone of a similar profile was cast, and I'd be a little bit more analytical about it, I think. But I thought, oh right, that's really, it's something really new and interesting about Who, and he's very different from Tom, and so I wouldn't have. I don't think there was anybody that I would think no back then, because I was I was so uncritical.
Going back to Joanna Lumley, I want a quick recommendation. One of my favourite things that she's done is a series called Class Act, with 2 seasons on ITV, 94 and 95, and she's the main character, and she's the wife of a crook who's gone to jail, and it's very much in the sort of Minder or Lovejoy sort of drama when it needs to be, the funny bits when there needs to be funny bits, and of course she's perfect in it, it's on regular rotation in this house. I watched it at the time, and definitely recommended.
I mean, sometimes it's true that we will pick a series to buy that we don't know solely based on who's in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll just look at their listing and say, oh, what's this series? Not sure about the series, but we're sure about the actor.
Yes.
Yeah. That has certainly led us towards some interesting, lesser known shows. I think.
Has it led you to any disappointments out of interest?
Lisa?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, not necessarily the actor, for the writer, because we did, having liked Johnny Spate's work on Till Death Do Us Part.
Yeah.
I did get Curry and Chips.
Yeah.
And we watched one episode and we've buried it as far back on the shelf as we possibly can.
I mean, we bought Romany Jones based on
you haven't
James
built a
Beck,
patio
didn't
yet.
we?
Yeah.
And we've never got beyond episode 1 of that, so
that's
does happen.
Awful as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Paul bought us that, so thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
So yeah. There are certain things you think, oh yeah, that looks interesting, and then you start watching it and you go, no, don't think so.
So, Martin, what's the first Crown Court you're going to be watching from this set? Are you going to do it in order?
Oh, I always do them in order.
So, what's the first one on this set?
The Mugging of Arthur Simmons is the first one.
I don't think we've seen that one.
With? Who's in that?
Cyril Shaps. Hooray!
Hooray!
Cyril Shaps. Hooray!
Cyril Shaps bell. Ding!
You can edit that in afterwards.
Yeah, right.
Oh, sorry, and Cyril Shapp. He's another one from the series that Paul and I are reviewing. So yes, he reminded me there. Cyril Shapp.
Excellent. You see, everything comes back to Cyril Shaps.
Well, Martin,
that's how it should be.
You've written a poem about Cyril Shaps, haven't you? So
I did do it at one point, because I have a clue where it is off the top of my head.
Which got read out on BBC Radio 2s by Bob Fisher.
Yes.
If we've still got time to, I've been reminded of a series I've bought which I haven't yet watched, so I don't yet know whether it's going to be a letdown. But it's a series called The Riff Raff Element from 91 and 94, I think 2 seasons, and although it's got people like Pippa Guard, who else has it got in it? I did see some fame. Trevor Peacock, Ronald Pickup. The reason I bought it was because I saw that it had Celia Imrie in one of the main roles, and obviously I'm a fan of her stuff via Victoria Wood, but also Bergerac and The Nightmare Man. So any sort of unknown series with Celia Imrie in, or even if she's in a rom-com, I'll give her a go, because she's always fun to watch. She'll always make a bad film a bit better. So.
That's a great quote for the DVD cover, isn't it? She'll always make a bad film a bit better.
She's one of those strange people who turns up in things when you least expect it. You know, it's.
I wonder how much she vies for things with Joanna Lumley, because Joanna Lumley occasionally appears in as cameos in things. Shirley Valentine, I think she appears as a prostitute, or a friend of Shirley's who was a prostitute years ago, and she's only in it for like 10 minutes, I think. But I bet they go for the same roles often.
Apparently, uncredited young woman in the Fen Street Gang was her first one.
Oh, blimey.
But also does a couple of upstairs, downstairs.
I'd love to see her write that in an autograph book, best wishes. Young woman in here.
And she's also uncredited in Death on the Nile, if you want your Christie connection.
Okay.
Well, on that note, I think we'll say thank you to everybody for joining us today. Mm-hmm. So, thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lisa. And thank you, me.
And also thank you, the internet, for actually staying
together in one
working today.
Yes, well done, the internet. So, thank you to everyone, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
I wonder what would scare you. A witch, or a ghost, a monster, or perhaps even a Halloween pumpkin. Why don't you draw a picture of something that really frightens you? You can write about it too if you want to. I'm going to put my pumpkin in the shop window. I hope it doesn't frighten the customers away. Goodbye. We are witches of Halloween. Our faces are crooked and green. black-pointed